everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to share with you guys some tips and tricks on how to start drawing. No matter if you're a beginner or somebody who's trying to get back into drawing, drawing can be very intimidating, especially when you don't know where to start. But I want to be giving you my 4 tips that will make drawing a little bit more easier for you.
Everyone, welcome back to the channel.
To start off, we'll need a dull pencil. I'm just using a wooden pencil, an eraser,
a reference
photo,
paper.
and some paper.
So to start off with,
let's talk about the reference photo. This is a reference photo I'll be using today for today's sketch. Now it is very important to have a reference photo. You may think you know what something looks like, but when it comes down to actually sketching,
things can go
awry, and it would be very helpful if you know exactly what you're looking at.
So my first tip is to work from smaller pieces rather than a whole. What I mean by that is, instead of trying to capture everything in this image all at once, let's first break it up into smaller pieces. And to do that, really study the image and look at all the shapes that you come up with. What shapes are in this image? So I can break up this background into a triangle. And then for the dog, I can break it up into circles and cylinders. I can break it up into triangles. So really try to break up what you're looking at into individual shapes, and then from the shapes we can give it some form. So let's begin sketching out this image. I'm going to start with the background, and as I mentioned before, I'm going to simply break it up into smaller shapes. Now keep in mind that your reference photo and the paper you may be working at might be different sizes, so we want to keep that in mind so we don't draw our image too big or too small. So I think from my image, I would start the background right about here. And remember to draw light. We don't want to draw very harsh, dark line, because later it's going to be really hard to erase when we make a mistake. And it'd be really easy to just go over the lines darker when we want to finalize the actual sketch. So a good thing to also do is to take your pencil and place it onto your reference image. And that way, you have a little guideline for yourself. So I want this angle to be approximately like over here. And then I just put it onto my paper like so. Then I know that this angle will be like this. Right. Now, when it comes to the dog in this image, I'm going to break the dog into shapes that I see. So I can, for the head, I can draw a circle. But first I want to know where the eyes are relative to this whole image. So use my pencil again. See, the eye is approximately here, so right about here. And I can just do little marks to remind myself. And then now we can just draw a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, all of this is fixable and erasable. So this is why we want to keep our lines super light. So here's the head, it's just a circle, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then for the nose, I can start drawing it as kind of like a cylindrical shape. Or almost like a cone, actually, since the snout comes to a somewhat point at the very end, so it's not quite cylindrical. There we go. For the ears, going to break it up into triangles. Now your shape doesn't have to be all geometric shapes. They can just be shapes that you see and shapes that would help you later when you're trying to build up to the form. Like what I'm doing here now, it's not a triangle, or you can break it up into a triangle and a rectangle for the ear. Now for the other ear, just measuring again where that should be, and then drawing my shape. Now, I know I have a lot of adjusting and erasing to be done, so this is why I can just take my eraser, and since I have very light lines, when I erase, it just lifts up really easily. So I see that the body comes across this ear over here. So about right here, and then it gets a little bit smaller, not too much, but here I can just draw kind of an oval shape, kind of, or actually here I can just break it up like this to two smaller oval shapes like this. Here we go, and then here like so. I know it looks messy at this point, but right now we do not care how perfect and how neat it is. We are just laying down guidelines that will help us later when we actually build up the form. And the feet like this. Then the leash so. Now don't forget your shadows as well. Now it seems like I've drawn the shadow a bit too large, so I can just erase that and fix it. Now don't be afraid of erasing and fixing things. It's not a crime. And this process of just laying down your shapes and your guidelines can take several minutes. Just be patient. And if it's easier, you can actually just rotate your reference photo and your paper. There you go. See, and it's much more easier to draw like this. We want to make things easy for ourselves. Right, so my paper actually, I think, cut off here. So I'm just going to leave this part blank for now. Oh, hold on. Forgot. The leash, the shadow. Kind of forms like a triangle. Then it comes in like this. There we go. Now this isn't perfect at all, but we have something that we can work with, and that's always what you want. You want something that is workable and because we can always build on it rather than try to take things away. There you go. This is our base, and from here we can actually start adding curves and more angles to make this image more three-dimensional and not as flat as you can see right here. Now when you're drawing, be purposeful and strategic. Don't just draw because you think it's supposed to be like this. Really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Understand how all these shapes come together to form something like an image, something bigger. So like right here, I noticed that for the eye, it comes in kind of an angle like this. So here is a little bit too round. So I will want to change that and make it more angular. pay attention to these small details. And like the snout is not exactly straight. It has a curve like this. And then the nose would be right here. And then the snout, the mouth kind of curves in like this. Has a little bit of curves here and here. So I'm going to do that like so. And for this ear comes like in here, has a little bit of curve here. Now when you're trying to build a form, you don't need to go and press really heavy and make your line super dark, but just enough so you can tell apart your guidelines from what you're actually drawing. And now this is when it's really helpful to have these guidelines, these foundational bases, because we see for the body, we drew a circular form because we want the body to be curved, to give it, to fill it instead of just flat. So we can just simply follow the curves that we already drew. pause and stop right here and say that if you look at what I'm doing, everything is all shapes. Even the shadows here have a shape. Like this one over here has a certain shape, maybe not geometric, maybe more organic, but everything here has a shape. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just breaking it down into smaller individual shapes and then going from that shape and making it have some kind of form. Now don't get too caught up in making things perfect. Have fun, you know. I think that's the most important thing. And that's my last tip, is to have fun. If you're not having fun and you're feeling really stressed about drawing, then you're doing something wrong. Because naturally, you know, you might be thinking, oh, my drawing sucks, it's not good. But you know, just keep practicing, and naturally you'll get the hang of it more, and you'll get to notice things more and be more observant, and it'll be natural to you. You'll know how these shapes interact with one another to create a larger picture as a whole. And as I take your time with this, there's no rush, there's no hurry. I'm just trying to draw the darker shadows on the fur. Now, I don't need to be detailed and draw every single little fur, but just to kind of give the illusion of fur. So that's all about drawing, is we're not going to sit here and draw every single hair of fur. That would take way too long. Instead, we'd want to create the illusions, like the illusions that there's shadow by adding these shapes. It's all about using shapes to create an illusion. See, it's darker over here. So I'm going to make this darker, and I'm just using these like little hash marks or cross hatchings to make it darker instead of just filling it all in, scribbling like this. So that way I can build upon what I have. Pay attention, the shadows here aren't like I've drawn out, they're very straight, but actually they're curved and they wrap around the tail. They follow the shape of the tail. Still keeping a light hand so that we can, you know, if you want to make this darker, we can just go over it a little bit more and make parts darker, because we can never really make it lighter again. Sure, we can erase, but if you completely saturate, you know, the paper versus if you go light handed and you try to erase because you're like, oh, well, I don't want that more. So you try to erase, it's going to be very difficult to erase, or you're going to have all these scribbly lines. But if you just do very lightly, see, erase is much easier and you won't have these lines underneath it. And this is also a good way to blend, is to start light and build upon it through layers. You want to always work in layers. Okay, I gotta work on this drawing a lot more. There's definitely more work needed for this, but for the sake of the video, I'm just going to end it right here. Now let's go over the tips that I gave so far. So the first one is to work from smaller pieces rather than a whole. So instead of looking at like the big picture and being stumped about where to first draw, just look at the shapes. Like look at your friend's photo and break it up into smaller shapes that you can work with. The second tip is to draw yourself guidelines. It's okay to draw guidelines. It is not a crime. We all do it. Make things easy for yourself. So like I said, a cool trick is to take your pencil and measure the different angles. Measure the angles and then transfer it onto your paper. And you can draw guidelines like where the eye is, or even the body need work. So I probably would draw myself guidelines to the body, but make things easier by just laying down where things should be. Be purposeful. Now, be strategic about what you're doing and why you're doing. Really understand the meaning behind each mark and each line. Like, why am I shading like this? Aside from because I see it in my reference photo, is because understanding that the light is coming from this way and it is casting a shadow over here. So everything here is darker than everything here. And understanding that will really dramatically help improve your drawing and really help you, explain why you're doing the things that you're doing, instead of just what I see is what I draw, so it should be like that. And have fun. Don't pressure yourself. If you pressure yourself, your drawing is not going to come out good, I promise. But if you're having fun and there's no pressure in making things look perfect, then your drawing, trust me, will be so much better, because you're not constantly worrying about things. You're just drawing for fun, and that's what drawing should be. Drawing should be fun, not something stressful. All right, I'm going to stop here. This is my finished drawing. It's not perfect, but it's, as I always said, it's definitely buildable and fixable. And we started this just from drawing simple lines and drawing simple shapes, instead of just being stumped on what, and then just try to draw everything and like try to draw like, oh well, I guess it's like this, and then trying to freehand and drawing these shapes there. See, I can't even get the shape right if I'm just gonna freehand and draw them. But when I have my guidelines, I can just follow it. I can literally just follow my own lines. All right, guys, that's all my tips for you guys. I hope this is helpful. I've never really done a tutorial-ish video like this. Let me know if this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!